rate a closeout of the Clean Transportation Needs Assessment, the Community Transportation Needs Assessment projects that were part of Window 2. This event will be available in both English and Spanish, and our colleagues from Rooted will be supporting this amazing effort, and they will be providing a brief introduction to help you access the language channel of your preference. So I'll pass the mic to our colleagues from Rooted.
Gracias, Diana. Thank you, Diana. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Naira y junto con mi colega Javi formamos parte de Rooted Language Justice y seremos sus intérpretes el día de hoy. Good afternoon, my name is Naira and alongside my colleague Javi, we are a part of Rooted Language Justice and we will be your interpreters for today. Este evento tendrá interpretación del inglés al español y viceversa dentro del marco de la justicia del lenguaje. Es posible que ambos idiomas se hablen en este espacio el día de hoy. Así que les pedimos que si es su primera vez usando los canales de idioma, por favor pongan mucha atención a las siguientes instrucciones. This event will have interpretation available from English to Spanish and vice versa within the framework of language justice. It is possible that both languages will be spoken here today. So if this is your first time using the language channels, please pay close attention to the following instructions. La función de interpretación ya está activada. Si están en una computadora o celular, verán un globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de la ventana de Zoom. Tal vez lo puedan ver mediante el menú de 3 puntitos que dice más o more en inglés. Hagan clic en interpretación y seleccionen el idioma que prefieren. Les recordamos que si no son bilingües en ambos inglés y español, deben elegir un canal de idioma. The interpretation feature is now activated. If you are on a computer or cell phone, you will see a globe at the bottom of your Zoom window. You might be able to access it through the 3-dot menu that says More. Click on these and select the language you prefer. A gentle reminder that if you are not bilingual in both English and Spanish, you must select a language channel. Si tienen unos audífonos con micrófono disponibles, por favor úsenlos. Se nos hace posible la interpretación con mejor calidad si les podemos escuchar claramente. If you have a headset with a microphone, please wear it. It makes quality interpreting possible if we can hear you clearly. Ahora vamos a hacer una breve prueba de los canales de idioma. Por favor, seleccione su canal de idioma ya. Now we are going to do a quick language channel test to make sure everyone connects. Please select your language channel now. Si están conectados al canal de inglés, podrán escuchar a mi compañera, y si están en el canal de español, me podrán escuchar a mí. Si por favor me podrían dar una señal de vida o una reacción con emojis de que me pueden escuchar bien, ya sea en el canal de español o la interpretación de Javi en el canal de inglés. Ok, muy bien, muchas gracias. Veo sus reacciones. Ok. Bueno, a continuación les compartimos unas pautas para poder fomentar la comunicación dentro de la justicia del lenguaje. Primero, les pedimos a todos que hablen a un paso moderado. Si es que necesitamos que hablen más despacio, compartiremos tortuguitas en el chat. Es posible que quizás también tengamos que amablemente interrumpirles si es que no logran ver el chat. También, si mencionan términos complejos o siglas, les pedimos que por favor las deletreen o expliquen. Por ejemplo, los nombres de sus puestos de trabajo y organizaciones o cualquier otro nombre de programa. Por último, las pausas de 1 segundo entre las personas que están hablando nos ayudan a terminar de transmitir el mensaje compartido. Muchas gracias y ahora les pasamos la palabra a los organizadores para poder comenzar a usar la función de interpretación.
Thank you, Nara and Rudit. Okay. Hopefully everyone is added on the language channel. We'll get started. Hi everyone, welcome to our second window of Community Transportation Needs Assessment Closeout Celebration. Thank you for joining us today. As an overview, the CMO program helps under-resourced communities identify and overcome mobility obstacles with funding and technical assistance for community transportation needs assessment and implementation of zero-emission and shared transportation projects. The program under the CMO is administered through the California Air Resources Board, and the program administrator team includes CalSTART and Shared Use Mobility Center. It is funded by California Climate Investments and California Energy Commission's Clean Transportation Program. And this will be the timeline of today. We'll start it with the welcome and context setting, and we'll go over to awardees presentations, and we'll have an opportunity for Q&A to awardees, and we'll take a 5-minute break, and then another round of awardee presentations and Q&A, and we'll follow up with the program lessons learned, closing remarks, and an optional networking session at the end. Okay, I'll pass it to Joey.
Thank you so much, Katerina. Can everyone hear me? Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Joey Juhas Lukomsky, and it's great to be here to celebrate the hard work of all these awardees. I'm happy to say that this is my second needs assessment closeout event, but the first one I participated in was actually as a CTNA awardee. So it's great to be here on the other side and seeing more awardees wrap up their great projects. So to set some context, want to go over for new guests, what is a community transportation needs assessment and why do one? So as Katerina said, it's to support under-resourced communities in evaluating transportation gaps, preferences and priorities with data collection and analysis combined with representative community engagement. And needs assessments include 3 major components. One is the transportation access data analysis, which includes a resident survey and analysis of at least 3 data sources about the community's transportation needs and experiences. There's also the at least 2 community engagement activities. So that includes things like focus groups, going door to door, house meetings, interviews, workshops, and more. And the last item is a summary report, final report, summarizing the conclusions. And why do awardees do them other than these things? It's also a requirement for being awarded a mobility project voucher through the Clean Mobility Options pilot program, which is where awardees receive voucher funding to implement a shared mobility project that they've identified from their needs assessment. So in this round, awardees each received vouchers for up to $100,000 to conduct their needs assessment over a period of 12 months. Public agencies, nonprofits, and state-recognized tribal governments were eligible awardees. And we had a total of 12 awardees in window 2. Next slide, please. So here is our list of window 2 awardees, which we'll be hearing from some of them today. I do want to highlight that most of our awardees here also had a partner organization to support their efforts, which we know is really important and like to see because partnerships are a huge part of community capacity building for these projects as well. And yeah, next slide. So here's a map that sort of shows the spread across the state of where our awardees' project areas were. Eligible project areas for CMO vouchers include SB, that's State Bill 535, disadvantaged communities located, well, in the California EPA's, Environmental Protection Agency's Cal EnviroScreen 4.0. Also, low-income communities were eligible for this project, for project areas, and tribal lands as well, located in disadvantaged communities or low-income communities. So you see we have a nice spread across the state here with some in the Los Angeles and San Diego area. We had 5 in the Central Valley from Sacramento to Kings County, and a couple on the coast in Santa Cruz and Monterey County. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're here today to hear from some of those awardees, as well as the program administration team. And in doing that, we will learn about the process and findings of mobility needs across the state. We're going to highlight the community-focused methodology of the needs assessment. We'll meet the folks that are working on these mobility improvements in their communities, and everyone will have a chance to engage with project implementers, whether through the Q&A session or sort of the meet and greet at the end of the meeting as well. And with that, I'll pass it back to Katerina.
Thank you, Joey. So this is the order of presentation for the first round of awardees. We'll start with Bike LA, followed by UC Santa Cruz, Living Better Lives, and Greater Sacramento Urban League. Then we'll have a Q&A for all those awardees. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll respond to you in the chat, or we'll respond during the Q&A time. And then I'll pass it to Bike LA.
Thank you, Katerina. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Fuller. I'm a program coordinator with Bike LA in Los Angeles. Our project was a community transportation needs assessment in the neighborhoods of Boyle Heights and East Los Angeles. I would like to say thank you to the Shared Use Mobility Center for giving us the opportunity to carry out this assessment and also to present our findings here today. We would like to acknowledge that Los Angeles is going through a lot right now due to recent wildfires, which makes this kind of research all the more pressing as we work to improve our transportation system and make transit more equitable, affordable, and environmentally sustainable. Bike LA is a nonprofit that works to make all communities in LA County healthy, safe, and fun places to ride a bike through advocacy, education, and outreach. This project aligns with our mission to understand the current transportation realities in these communities, and it's been a privilege to work with colleagues from our 2 partner organizations, Public Matters and Community Power Collective, and I would let each of them introduce themselves right now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brenda Jackson, and I am lead transit justice organizer at Community Power Collective. We are a local organization based in Boyle Heights in East LA, and we organize street vendors, we organize public transit riders, and we organize renters to build power in our community and fight for better infrastructure and for systems that benefit our community. I'll pass it to the folks from Public Matters.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Vasquez. I am the Community Liaison for Public Matters. We are a creative studio for civic engagement. I personally love this project, being born and raised in East LA, but now being able to participate in the other side of the table as a community-based organization is exciting. I'll pass it on to Bike LA.
Thank you so much to Christine and Brenda. We will be hearing more from them in just a little bit. Katerina, yes, thank you. Slide 2. So to give you an overview of our project, this needs assessment took place in Boyle Heights in East LA, predominantly Mexican and Mexican American communities, historically lower income neighborhoods where residents do rely heavily on public transportation and have, in general, long commute times, in general, limited access to safe, efficient, and affordable transit options. We also thought it was important to mention the impact of the East LA Freeway interchange, which runs directly through Boyle Heights. It's one of the biggest interchanges in the nation, and has resulted in long-term negative social, environmental, and public health impacts. Next slide, please. This is a map showing our research area, Boyle Heights in purple and East LA in the blue. Next slide, thank you. So some existing transportation options in the area include one metro light rail line with 7 stops, several local bus lines, private vehicles, rideshare, some nonprofit and private shuttles, and some use of personal mobility devices such as wheelchairs, bikes, e-bikes, scooters, or skateboards. Next slide. Thank you. So just to go over our goals for this project, number 1 was to identify transportation patterns, gaps, and improvements to enhance clean, accessible, and sustainable mobility. Number 2 was to engage vulnerable populations, including youth, seniors, individuals with disabilities, and in general, community members of all backgrounds that depend on transit. And our 3rd goal was to assess interest in developing clean transit amenities in these neighborhoods, with options like e-bike or scooter rentals, metro bike share, and charging hubs. So at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Christine, who will speak more about our outreach process and methodology.
Thank you. I think going into any project, it's very important to understand the community and the background and the history of that community. In this case, East LA and Boyle Heights have faced decades of poor planning decisions that continue to impact community members today. And then due to this history of mistrust, many community members are often cautious and at times hesitant about engaging with different agencies. So to rebuild this trust and address these concerns, we prioritized having inclusive engagement in a not so traditional way and in a more approachable way. These efforts were supported by a mix of long-standing partnerships and new collaborations that were established specifically for this project. Our engagement efforts prioritized people of all ages and abilities, and to ensure that we have diverse perspectives, and that those were being included. So we collaborated with the Garage Board Shop, which work with the youth and people who skate. We worked with the Senior Center, who represent the senior population, and then people and Pushroom Foundation, who work with people with disabilities, and those who rely with mobility assistant devices. And then we can go turn it. Yeah, thank you. Having grown in East LA in the community and working in these transportation projects with the community in the past, I've learned that folks are oftentimes hesitant towards taking a survey, which is why we took a different approach to surveying. So we decided to engage in meaningful conversations. We held dedicated workshops with different community groups of all ages and abilities to have deeper discussions. And then we also had fun signage. So we wore like these big ears to tell community members that we're all ears. And then also recognizing that this community is a predominantly Spanish-speaking population, we ensured that all presentations and materials and surveys were available in Spanish. Our next slide, please. And then to avoid any disconnect, we held events and engagements across just different areas of the community. So ensuring that all parts of the community were being represented. Our outreach activities, they ranged from small, intimate workshops to have those meaningful, deeper conversations to large-scale community events to meet people where they're at, since we know like what activities are taking place in the communities. We wanted to meet people where they're at. So again, we wanted to prioritize inclusivity, engaging community members of all ages and abilities, and then also taking a more fun and approachable manner to engagement. I'll pass it to Brenda.
All right. Thank you, Christine. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about our findings and then also some lessons learned. And just to kind of piggyback on what Christine was saying, you know, CPC, we're based in Boyle Heights and East LA. And a lot of our folks, whether they're in the street vending program, transit program, or tenant program, are public transit riders. So that's where we really felt called and connected to this project. Because a lot of folks who ride public transit also are people who, you know, use bikes or are interested in other forms of mobility that aren't car-based. So yeah, just wanted to give a little bit more context on our connection to this work. And going into our findings, what we found were kind of 4 categories. So first category, enhanced public transit options, was something that was really strongly represented in our data and even in the one-on-one conversations. So that included expanding the bus routes, making them more frequent. Also, free transit was something that came up. And then the sidewalk and mobility safety concerns, just improving the infrastructure, making it safer for folks to walk and bike. Something that we found was 77% of folks who we surveyed were likely to ride a bike with protected bike lanes, but 55% said they were unlikely to ride in the street without bike infrastructure. And that was something that came up a lot in our conversations. There's a lot of fear about riding a bike in the communities that we surveyed. And then also the affordability and payment options. So making sure that there's flexible fare systems and also including cash paying riders or cash users. And then education and awareness. So that was promoting safe transportation practices through education programs and also increased awareness of what is already available, because a lot of folks aren't aware of what's already available. And just to share a quick kind of story that I feel like touches on a few of these points, one of the folks we spoke to, they had their bus route changed. So their 30-minute commute to work turned into an hour and a half based on the, you know, new route that they had to take. Now they had to take 2 buses instead of 1. They decided to try bike riding to their second bus stop, just, you know, to save some time. And they were really scared after doing it once or twice. And then they didn't do it again because they didn't feel safe riding a bike down Soto, which is a very, you know, main street in Boyle Heights. And I think that touches on definitely the first 2, perhaps even the last one as well for the findings. And I will pass it to Emily to wrap us up. Or sorry, let me go ahead and do the lessons learned. Can you switch? So lessons learned, it was kind of challenging to talk to folks who were on their way to work. We did some outreach out in the streets. Folks were, you know, pressed for time. And then doing things during the work days was a little bit challenging. So we did have some weekend engagement activities, which helped. And then also just getting creative with outreach opportunities, I think could be helpful. And perhaps trying new methods that we didn't do. And I'll pass it to Emily to close us out.
Thank you so much, Christine and Brenda, for your words today and all of your work on this project. To quickly go through our next steps, we want to continue with targeted community engagement, focus on understanding and addressing locally identified transportation needs. We want to implement actionable pilot programs, projects that test and refine transportation solutions, invest in safety, develop safe, accessible walking and biking networks to address high rates of traffic injuries and fatalities, and finally make a call to decision makers, advocate for policies and investments that promote transportation equity, and align actions with community priorities to drive equitable and sustainable change. To wrap things up, I think it's safe to say that we learned a lot through our outreach, engagement, and research, and the results of our survey have added to our current understanding of transportation gaps and the urgency of implementing solutions. Our work on this project would not have been possible or nearly as successful without our partnerships with Community Power Collective and Public Matters. Their strong ties to these communities allowed us to engage with community members that we otherwise would not have been able to access. I'd like to say thank you again to CPC and Public Matters and to the Shared Use Mobility Center, California Climate Investments, California Air Resources Board, the State of California Energy Commission for making all of this possible. We will be happy to answer any questions during the Q&A, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily, Brenda, and Christina. If you have any questions for Bike LA, please feel free to put in the chat, and then we'll go over to UC Santa Cruz. Georgina?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I wish I had invited my colleagues to present with me now that I see how you did it. Great job. My name is Georgina Arias. I'm with the University of California, Santa Cruz, and I'll say UCSC repeatedly. Just from a show of hands or reactions, or just wave at me in the camera, how many people have been to Santa Cruz or UCSC before? I can see some of you. Wonderful. Thank you. This is your personal invitation to come visit us. We're a beautiful campus on the West Coast, and I would love to see you all there. UCSC, in partnership with Transportation and Parking Services Department, we call it TAPS, and I work for TAPS, received the CMO CTNA grant for $97,000 to carry out a community-based research project to assess the current clean mobility options for commuting to and within the campuses to determine where improvements could be made, especially for the underserved populations that compose a significant portion of the campus community. Next slide. UCSC spans a wide demographic range with a variety in age, undergraduate and graduate students, staff, and faculty. Also cultural identity, ethnicity, and economic background. UCSC is known for social mobility, which is demonstrated by 34% of undergraduates being first-generation college students. By gender, we're about half and half women and men, and then a 5% other or non-binary individuals. By race, we're approximately 32% European American, 29% Asian, and 27% Chicanx or Latinx undergraduate students. By home location, we're spread out through California. Over half of all first-year students originate from the San Francisco Bay Area or Los Angeles, Orange County areas. The next most popular home location for first-year students is Monterey Bay, Silicon Valley, and then Central Valley area and last San Diego Inland Empire. UC Santa Cruz encompasses several facilities, including what we call the main campus, the main residential campus. That's what's in the map in front of you. Then there's the West Side Research Park, Coastal Science Campus, and then a Silicon Valley extension in Santa Clara. If you can tell from the map, there's a lot of green. What you can't tell is that it's hills. The extensive and hilly terrain represents distinct transportation challenges, contributing to the campus's strong commitment to clean mobility and transportation demand management. We have a grade of 5 to 7% on campus, which is significant if you're trying to walk or bike. And this is campus roads and paths, necessitating a robust bus network to overcome the challenge of that hill. Current transportation options on our campus include B-Cycle, which is bike share, Zip Car, which is car share, the Santa Cruz Metro Transit, our own campus shuttles, a disability van service, van pool services, carpool services, and an emergency ride home. Next slide. Our project goals, there were many. Understanding the demographic profile of the subject population, identifying the subject population's current commute patterns and needs, and you'll hear me say subject population a lot, gauging the subject population's current knowledge of the shared clean mobility options, as well as their interest in learning about and possibly using other options. Understanding the challenge they faced by through access and utilizing the various options. And then describing the key findings to provide a list of recommendations that should be taken to enhance the options for the community. These targeted groups, that's okay, you can leave it there. These targeted groups included lower wage employees, students and employees at satellite campuses, and students affiliated with other campus support entities, including Educational Opportunity Program, EOP, services for transfer, re-entry, and resilience scholars, that we call them STARS, Hispanic Serving Institution Services, the People of Color Suitability Collective, and 7 other campus resource centers. In methodology, we have several plans, many plans at a campus university that has data that we were able to contribute to this study. They include the Climate Action Plan, the Decarbonization and Electrification Plan, the Long Range Development Plan, the Sustainability Plan, the Transportation Demand Management Plan, and on top of that, we do an annual transportation survey that provides data of what people are doing now. We also developed a survey as part of this project, and that was specifically to target the groups that I had mentioned earlier. We developed a pilot survey just to make sure we were all on the same page. We offered it to a few people to just get the wording right. And then we had the survey spread out to all of our constituents, including outreach materials to increase engagement. The survey was done from April to May 2024, and the team attended a series of events on campus to conduct outreach to encourage participation in the survey. And then the survey and focus groups. The community engagement strategy included both virtual and in-person group events. The team engaged people at events and during pre-scheduled meetings with staff, faculty, and students, prioritizing meeting people where they were rather than attempting to bring them elsewhere. In-person outreach included distribution of flyers and other TAPS, transportation-related educational materials, in preparation for the survey. The team engaged with dozens of people at events to learn about their mobility needs and options. The following strategies were used to ensure that the community engagement was clear, accessible, representative of the community, and transparent. We focused on the purpose of the community engagement through consistent messaging of social media, outreach materials, and introductory statements while conducting the survey. People were engaged at local events and pre-scheduled meetings. The project team included staff and volunteers that were native Spanish speakers and had Latinx backgrounds. And flyers were posted and distributed around the campus, advertising the survey's ability so it could be transparent and accessible to community members. And at least our students love QR codes. On to findings. And I think this is the most important, meaty part of this conversation for my campus, were what were the findings. Many transportation challenges related back to lack of infrastructure, shortage of options, cost, inconvenient schedules or bus routes, campus topography, and a lack of awareness of options were identified in the survey responses. Providing additional or improved clean mobility options proves critical to addressing transportation barriers on and to campus, as well as negative health and environmental impacts due to car dependency. Successful mobility options for our campus must be affordable, convenient, reliable, and efficient. According to our CTNA survey results, 72% of the target population currently commutes using some type of clean mobility option. This data point underscores the importance of optimizing the clean mobility options that are already in place and being used. When respondents were asked what mobility options they would consider to use for their commute trips in addition to their current mode, most of the responses were around transit, so our metro service, our campus shuttles, and electric bikes or scooters. And just as a side note, scooters are not allowed on our campus, but people told us they love them anyway, and we need to hear that. It's worth noting that this breakdown of commuting modes revealed by the CTNA survey differs from our 2023 TAPS annual survey. And this just underscores the note of people, the entire campus gets the annual transportation survey, but when you target a smaller, more specific survey to these underserved populations, you're going to get very different answers. So I think we're going to try to do this type of survey with targeted marketing more often, just to make sure everyone's included. We'll go on to the next one. I should have saved that for lessons learned. Engagement occurs in person on campus and at other local events. While the outreach method is effective, it tended to result in very brief interactions. Surveying and events didn't allow much time for longer, more in-depth conversations. Survey responses were also limited to those who were motivated to participate in the survey, which may have resulted in biases. Our survey also had incentives, so you could win a gift card, you could win swag. So sometimes that might skew the survey results if people are just doing it for the Amazon gift card. Current events at the time also greatly affect the results. We recently had a bus accident that left the bus driver dead and 5 students injured. The cause of the crash was still under investigation at the time that the project was going on. Also a big item, pro-Palestinian protesters blocked 2 campus entrances, leading to remote instruction, limited metro service, rerouting and delays of campus shuttles. So all of this was going on while the survey was happening and while we were trying to get people participating in focus groups. Team members aim to delicately navigate diverse perspectives and sentiments in order to foster representative and unbiased responses. The protests also created logistical hurdles, such as restricted access to campus, shuttle cutbacks, and we had to switch from in-person events to online events. So try as we might to have in-person events on campus with food, incentives, going to where they were located, because the entire campus was going to remote learning during this period, we had to go to remote online focus groups as well. Let's move on to next steps. Transportation challenges identified in the survey responses and focus groups related to the built environment, natural topography and availability of options, lack of awareness of options, and inconvenience. Clean mobility options on and to campus, they need to be low cost, safe, convenient, and dependable. They should also be accompanied by relevant ongoing education and programming and the pursuit of grant funding. And I'll say ongoing education because every year we have a new batch of students. And, you know, in about 4 years, those students go away. So we have to keep refreshing the information and putting it in front of them every year. Also, when students are just starting their year, they're not really thinking about transportation. They're thinking about housing and their classes. So we just need to get it to them in a timely manner when they might be paying attention, in time for them to build a good habit of maybe walking or taking a bike to class. Potential projects that we're looking at are live tracking technology on buses and shuttles, secured and modernized bike racks, protected bikeways, peak hour transit schedule, night lighting, and ambassadors. Other strategies that we're looking at are public awareness campaigns, public workshops, transit programs and infrastructure, demonstrations or pilot programs, expansion of public transit options, accessible bike share programs, electric vehicle adoption, and I can go on and on and on. There were lots of recommendations that were put before us. And I look forward to your questions during the Q&A.
Thank you, Georgina. Next, we have Living Better Lives. Jeff?
Good. Can you guys hear me okay? Wave or something so I can see it.
We hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for allowing me to present. My name's Jeff Tillman. I'm the Executive Director for Living Better Lives. And we've been established about 6 years. We've been in the Monterey County for 19 years, about 20 years, I would say. So I'm very well connected into the Monterey County and the community that I've reached out and started to serve. I've lived in the area. And we do various programs throughout Monterey County, ranging from drum classes, art classes, and this various transportation project that I took on myself personally because I was going around various areas around the Monterey, as well as Santa Cruz, San Jose, San Francisco, Oakland, Fresno, Modesto, various areas that had different bike programs going. And so it sparked my interest, and I really set on that journey to bring something like that type of information and program to my community. And it's I just want to give a quick shout out to Joey, because he's the first gentleman that I met in this journey. And he's from Clean Mobility Options, who actually took it upon himself, and I've been working with him straight through. And I thank you so much, Joy, for your assistance. So with that being said, let's get into the presentation. Can we go to the next, the first slide here? My project area is the SB 535 AB 1505 areas of Monterey County. Can you hit the next slide again? Particularly, this area is Marina and parts of Salinas. Can you hit the next slide? These are this area. I kind of focused on this Marina area, as well as the back area of components of Seaside and Salinas. That this is the medium low income area, and I don't like to say low income. I just say we're doing what we need to do. So this is the area, the information that I got from that region, ranging from Monterey County and the rural areas in Seaside and Salinas. So I stayed in my focus in Marina. Next slide, please. Let's go again. Yeah, here we go. Let's go to the goals. My goals were 3 goals, particularly were to identify the technical challenges that we have in the areas regarding the lifestyle mobility, evaluate the transportation gaps and the barriers, as well as in the rural areas and the disadvantaged areas, and basically raise the awareness and start a process of trying to identify how to create and introduce a new sustainable transportation option that would be complementary to the transportation things that are going on today. So I'm super excited. So next slide. My method was going through surveys, door-to-door, hosting community engagements and focus groups. I particularly was on ground doing surveys door-to-door, and I had a lot of slams, and a lot of people still not very warm when you go to their door just in these particular times. And so that was a new experience for me because I've been in this area for, like I said, 2 decades, and I know quite a bit of people, and it was just challenging to see that the community was very frustrated and not really aware of what was going on in regards to transportation. So I did a lot of surveys at farmers markets, libraries, and I hosted 2 community engagement events myself, and I started another farmers market in the other regions of Monterey County. Next slide. These are my flyer that I use to hand out to people, door to door, farmers markets, libraries, community events, which are my favorite. I love giving engagements throughout the community of Monterey and Seaside and Salinas. And let's go to the next slide to show you some of the other things that I have there. It's in both English and Spanish. These are my online pieces, components that I use to raise awareness about different events in the libraries that I went to in Marina and Salinas and Seaside. Next slide. My first engagement, I had a coffee shop because I was going to a few coffee shops in the one particularly in Maslany. There's a lot of things going on over there. There was a recent fire and the recovering. They just opened up the lanes up this last couple of days ago. Everyone seems to be safe. And my first engagement event, we got rained on, so I had to cut it short. But I had a few people come in. Got a few surveys there, and we had some e-bike people ride, and it was fun. Next slide. Here's my second event. I was fortunate to connect with Ecology Action, and they came out and set up their booth, and we had a few great vendors there that were from the community, local people that were engaged, and it was super fun because I really liked what Ecology Action has going in the community in Santa Cruz, as well as starting around in my area, Monterey. So I see them fairly often out when I'm out and about. So let's go to the next slide, please. And here are my findings from all the places I've went throughout the area and surveys. And here's the information that I was very interested in because a lot of things, I don't know if you can see all that there. A lot of people had mixed emotions and weren't really aware of what was the options of transportation, and but they were interested, and they said to me a couple years ago that people came out and took some surveys, took some information, but didn't see anything come from it. So I'm very passionate about making sure I make something happen. Next slide. So here's my other findings to the area, which I will probably, if you guys reach out to me, I'll happily give those to you, no problem. Next slide. Here are my other findings from all the other areas that I went throughout my community. And I collected about 300 surveys. Keep going. All right, and here we go. Yeah, the main concern in the community here is the safety. Is it safe? The roads were still, infrastructure issues are still happening. Oh, okay, infrastructure issues are happening, and they're working on that, and I'm starting to see more things going on in the community, like the transportation in Monterey counties doing a lot of good work as well, and they were worried about vandalism and theft and battery fires and road hazards, and I would say we're pretty much was a lack of awareness was a main issue, and the traffic. Next slide. And community barriers that I came across were affordability. Yeah, many people, and accessibility, and the infrastructures needs a little more work, and more awareness about the programs as well as technical awareness was important. Next slide. Okay, lessons learned. These are various programs that I see that are doing things in my community that I've reached out and totally open to working with all the way through. I've called and I tried to do my best to connect. Oh, we're at time. Let me wrap up. I just seen that there. Please keep in mind, next slide, please. Okay, my lessons that I learned is that we are at a pivotal moment here where a lot of programs are starting to pop up and the information is getting there, out there to the community. And I think more things will, as we develop in terms of infrastructure and safety, or these doing things like we're doing now is a path for success. Next slide. Let me wrap this up. I have pinpointed locations, a couple of hubs where I can work out of and do my ongoing assessments, and I'm going to start a pilot program in the communities. Next slide. And that is a couple of bikes, the bikes that I'm working on, my car that I'm going around through the community. I'm in conversations for acquisitions for bikes, as well as getting more workshops up and events. And let me just go ahead and say thank you guys for taking the moment to listen to me, and I will answer any questions in the Q&A. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, next is Greater Sacramento, Ali and Cleveland.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Ali, for Cleveland Bellows with us as well. Can you hear us, Cleveland?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to present today. We're presenting today on behalf of the Greater Sacramento Urban League. The Urban League has been a foundation in our community for more than 100 years, building community development, economic empowerment, and workforce development, and reaches a geographically large region across Sacramento region. And we'll talk a little bit more about the actual project area slide.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Ali did introduce, my name is Cleveland Deleuze with the Greater Sacramento Urban League, or GSUL, which for any time in this presentation, you'll just hear me refer to it as GSUL. But so with the CTNA that we conducted, we focused our efforts on two historically disinvested neighborhoods in the area, which is Del Paso Heights in the north, featured on this map, and then Oak Park in the south. And just quick little framing context for Del Paso Heights, it is currently surrounded by three major transportation highways in the area, Interstate 80 in the north, Highway 160 in the south, and then to the east of it, there is the business corridor for the Interstate 80. Whereas for Oak Park, Highway 99 and California Highway 50 border the neighborhoods. And then if we can move on to the next slide. So I'm just here to also talk about some of the background of these two neighborhoods, and something that is not projected on either of the slides is that both of these neighborhoods are historically Black communities. However, over time, it's diversified even more, but they're still primarily neighborhoods for people of color. Now, Del Paso Heights has a total population of 26,500 people. About 77.5% of its residents have a high school diploma or higher. The median income, however, is significantly below the regional and state medians at $45,011. And then the poverty rate is well above the Sacramento County average poverty rate of 13%. Del Paso Heights is at 18.9%. Now, many of the residents in the area, 45% exactly, are renters. Next slide. Now, moving on to Oak Park. Oak Park has a population of 14,400 with 88.4% of the residents having a high school diploma or higher. The median income, although higher than Del Paso Heights at 52,354, is still below the regional and state medians. And once again, its poverty rate is sitting higher than the county average, and Oak Park's poverty rate is at 13.9%. However, 36.4% of its neighborhoods are renters. And before we move on to the objectives and goals, I did just want to say that Oak Park currently has an undergoing development called Aggie Square that is a UC Davis project. And even though they have been working with the city of Sacramento, it still has this compounding effect that is affecting its residents with displacement and, of course, the lack of transportation options in the area. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Cleveland. And in terms of the objectives here, really, our goal here was to, be on the ground, meet with residents, and really get to the core of their sort of understanding their attitudes and assumptions about the existing transportation landscape serving their community. Ultimately, the goal here is really to sort of understand and assess sort of what are, if any, are the clean transportation options that could enhance mobility, particularly in these underinvested communities. We also know by looking at data and driving investments in these communities, the outcome that we're seeking is reducing environmental impact by promoting a number of transportation solutions. And in doing so, of course, ensuring that there is reliability, affordability, and accessibility in any of those solutions. Next slide, please. In terms of our methodology and our sort of data collection and analysis, just I guess first and foremost, huge kudos to the mobility options program administrator and technical assistance team that did just really an outstanding job in providing guidance on the data collection sources. And so we certainly leaned into those data collection sources, which would include the census tract, the EPA, the Housing and Affordability Index, All-Transit, and a number of other resources as well. In terms of, so that was for the data transportation access analysis and conducting that piece of the work. In terms of the methodology related to community engagement, and clear more about the community engagement as we get into that. But the key really here was meeting residents and community members where they naturally are in the community, and not creating a situation where it would be sort of out of the ordinary to have them engage.
And as Ali did mention, we did want to make sure that we are meeting the community where they are at. And so we were able to conduct this by performing some stakeholder meetings, but then also during some of our events here at GSUL, that is when we decided to collect some of our surveys. We had a wonderful turnout at a previous event in December where we were able to collect 76 surveys, which is little bit of a challenge, I will say, working with our community, just because a lot of people do also have other priorities as well in their life. However, with that being said, we were still able to conduct a focus group and a community workshop. And we're very thankful that as a partner, EV Guide was able to do some tabling here at our headquarters in the Del Paso Heights neighborhood during our business hours to meet some of our clients here through our services, and of course, make sure that their voices are also heard during this process. Now, moving on to the next slide with partnerships.
Yeah, so this project really would not have been possible without really sort of the deep community roots that the Greater Sacramento Urban League has nurtured for many decades, and its varied programs, particularly the Black Child Legacy Program, as well as its Jobs Center, its Jobs Program. All of these programs afford us an opportunity to be in front of community members who visit the Urban League, weekly or quarterly for some sort of activity there. And again, I think it's key to mention the resources and the technical assistance provided by Clean Mobility Options technical assistance staff as well. Next slide. So we're going to sort of zip through these because there's quite a bit here. But when we're looking at the sort of survey and what folks are saying to us, we're looking at sort of two pieces of information. We're looking at information from one-on-one or small focus groups that we conducted, as well as the sort of broader data that we're getting from the survey. I think in terms of daily transportation methods, I think what we know in this particular population is that many residents reported driving, being self-drivers, driving alone, right? And we're going to look more at this data, and when you even with the nearly 70% of residents who drive alone, the number one factor, sort of their number one pain point in driving at all, was the rising cost of fuel and the just cost of driving in general. You have from the focus group, we had about 8% of the share with us that they transportation. That said, that had more individuals, they would use public transportation if the routes were more flexible, and if in some cases they felt the conditions were safe enough for them to do so. One example of this would be, we have situations across the neighborhood where, again, there are multiple transit lines. But if you know anything about sort of Sacramento, whether you're in the summertime or you're in the winter time here, we can have very inclement weather and or extreme heat. And so oftentimes the public transit stops are not properly covered. They are not, and certainly not comfortable for residents. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I think that, so really 60% of individuals that respondents shared with us that their primary challenge with transportation was that it was just too expensive, and or the distance that they needed to travel to was far and or inaccessible for the times that they needed to travel by either light rail and or the local transit. I also heard quite a bit from folks that there was a lack of accessible ride-on-demand services that were not the private providers such as Uber or Lyft, which folks do use, but there was a feeling that those services are costly. Next slide, please. We can move on to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Well, this is, some of the stuff is repeated. Yeah. Yep, this one right here, usage of, I think we're one slide back. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, so here you have, you have a situation where this question is sort of interesting, right? So the question here was, actually, would you use public transportation rather than are you using public transportation? And so nearly in the focus group, 70% of residents said, oh, we would absolutely use public transportation. It's relatively affordable compared to Uber or Lyft, maybe not as convenient, but they're not using it because of what they're reporting as it being inaccessible and or safety concerns related to infrastructure. Next slide. We also had a relatively high degree of interest in willingness to use a car share and or bike share programs in the region. The good news is that in both these communities, there was a short period of time where there in Sacramento was existed a private zero emissions car share program that many of the respondents that we talked to were very familiar with that service. That service has since exited the Sacramento market. They're no longer here. Fortunately, particularly for our community members in the Del Paso Heights community, they've been able to really sort of lean into just amazing community leadership by the Sacramento Air Quality Management District, who under CARB funding launched a couple of years ago our community car share. And so there was a high degree of familiarity with car share programs. Now, that being said, not all of them use that service. They believe that, well, then there were a couple of issues that arose. One, just sort of availability, cars not being available at the times that they would prefer to use the vehicle, and two, sort of a lack of exposure and awareness related to charging infrastructure and sort of how to charge those cars. In terms of bike share, again, if you know much about Sacramento, in this central city, sort of the grid of Sacramento, we have a very robust scooter and at one point very robust bike share program as well. Those programs also run by a private enterprise have by and large do not serve these communities and do as robustly as they do down south. In fact, we know that in for example, in Del Paso, there is no bike, there's no bike or scooter share there. In Oak Park, because Oak Park is downtown adjacent, there's more accessibility to bike share there, although there is not an existing car share program in Oak Park. Next slide, please. We can go to the next slide. The next slide. We can go to conclusions and recommendations would be great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes, I think the last slide, maybe. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I'm at the previous slide. If you can just go back a couple of slides and just start with concerns. Yeah, thank you so much. Conclusions and concerns. Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Actually the slide before this. Okay, yeah, awesome. This one, thank you so much. Yeah. So key here is cost, right? Like any solution that we're looking at that's not related to active transportation needs to be about reliability, accessibility, and reduction of cost, right? The sort of the second piece here is working, leaning into this data, making certain that we're sharing this data far and wide, particularly with public policy leaders, both at regional transit and at the city of Sacramento, to ensure that there is additional data here that says that residents are interested in enhanced safety of the public transit system, as well as infrastructure related to just trying to catch a bus. Next slide. I'd also note that in Del Paso, particularly in Del Paso, there's a lack of investment in, or what we recognize a lack of investment in active transportation enhancements, right? And so we have across Del Paso, and you saw the map, it's a relatively large sort of geographic area. And, we were able to identify like three bike lanes, right? And those bike lanes were sort of on the peripheral of the community, but not on the interior of the community. And so there is a recognized need for investments in safe bike passage. There's also across, these are historically underinvested communities in terms of its infrastructure. So across, blocks upon blocks, you have situations where, there most certainly needs to be ADA improvements, as well as just general capital improvements related to the pedestrian walkways and sidewalks in particular. We do know that because the former gig car operated in Sacramento for some time, there's a high degree of familiarity with that car share concept. We know that the Air Quality Management District's Our Community Car Share program is a successful program, and there is interest in expanding those types of services. Next slide. We'll wrap it up here. Yeah, okay, so in terms of lessons learned, I'll take some of this, Cleveland, and certainly feel free to sort of jump in. I think the biggest lesson learned here is that, and we heard in one of the other presentations, right? Oftentimes in our most vulnerable, underinvested communities, we have community leaders, and particularly on the government side, who have initiated these community conversations and or similar assessments. And then there's sort of this long sort of lag between the moment I reported, hey, there's challenges here, someone to help us out, and then the challenge actually being solved, right? And so I think that what it requires is ongoing organizing and engagement, and very much like how this project was structured around project milestones. It's almost like, hey, we've done an assessment, and what's the next sort of timeline and project, sort of milestone or milestones that keeps the community engaged, keeps them informed, and on the road to solutions, right? I think it's also really important that given the Greater Sacramento Urban League's sort of outstanding leadership in the region, it of course, when you in my experience, when you engage around a community assessment like this, and you have a big name like the Urban League, it seemingly makes it it appears like it may be a little bit easier to coordinate and corral all of the other sort of groups, and actually it's not, right? And so it's actually not. It's just just good old fashioned community organizing, right? And so so that's what you got to do.
And yes, that is one of our biggest lessons that we did have to learn here is making sure that we do take the time to properly engage our community leaders to, because everyone is busy out here. Everyone is trying to do their work. And so I do want to invite you all, if you're ever in the area, to come visit us here at GSUL at either of our neighborhoods that we had focused here. Hopefully we are using the lessons that we have here to advocate further for improvements in our area. And hopefully they will come to fruition soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And in terms of next steps, it's exactly what we said, just continue to engage the community between now and sort of the next opportunity to leverage these findings to implement solutions. The idea is to continue to at least have a quarterly conversation with community members.
Thank you, Ali and Cleveland. These slides will be shared afterwards, as well as the recording. And it is now time for Q&A. As we are running behind schedule, we'll do like a 6-minute Q&A. If you have any question, please feel free to raise your hand. And then we will unmute you and you'll be able to ask your questions or put them in the chat. I see a question in the chat from Jose or Josie. If you would like to speak, you can ask your question or I can read out loud your question. Okay, I will read it out loud. What was the most difficult part of the community engagement? For folks that presented, please feel free to chime in.
I'd be happy to answer.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Georgina from University of California, Santa Cruz. We wanted to do outreach at events where people were at, and then we wanted to invite them to the survey and invite them to the focus group. Reaching out to our leadership in different departments, different housing, different health centers, different resource centers, connecting with the right person to get their buy-in in time for us to get to their event in our schedule was a challenge. So we might be reaching out to someone for weeks and they're going to say, yeah, we're going to have an event in 3 months. And it's like, well, the survey's done in a month. The focus group is over in a month. So it's like trying to get the timing and the outreach to leadership was challenging for us. At least at a campus, you've got move-in, you've got exams, you got finals, and then the kids don't care anymore. So like trying to find the sweet spot.
Thank you, Georgina. Anyone else?
Hi. For us here at GSUL, one of our difficulties with the community engagement was just getting it similar to what Georgina said with the kind of timing of things. However, also just having community be interested in these kind of projects, just because a lot of our community members usually have, like I mentioned, other things that they would worry about. And so when they think about their transportation options, most of the time, if they have a car, that's the most important thing to them. They're not looking at any of the environmental impacts that could be occurring because of that, or even for other members of the community where they don't have access to it. So just trying to make sure that this kind of work is framed in a meaningful way for them to ensure that they're able to stay as engaged as possible and be advocates with our organization in the future.
Thank you, Cleveland. Do we have any other questions? If no questions, we'll take a short 3-minute break, and then we'll come back. Let's come back at 4:26. Thank you. If folks are back, please turn on your camera or put a reaction so we know that you're present. Thank you, everyone. It looks like a lot of people are back. I'm gonna put up the presentation again. And we'll get started with Valley Improvement Project. Edgar?
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Edgar Garibay, and I am the project manager for Valley Improvement Projects, and I will be co-facilitating this presentation with Ali Cooper from EV Guide. Ali?
Great, thank you, Edgar. Thank you so much for having me. Want to especially thank the leadership at the Valley, especially most certainly co-founder Bianca Lopez for her decade and a half of community leadership across Stanislaus County and beyond to build organizing capacity in the environmental justice space. And certainly want to thank Edgar, who's been sort of the dedicated community organizer and serious master on this project. So moving on to the next slide, we're just going to jump right into it.
Yeah, in regards to Modesto, it is located in the northern San Joaquin Valley. And as you see, there are 4 areas that I'll cover. In terms of a diverse population, majority Hispanic speaking population, 44%, white 40%, and smaller communities of both Asian and African American at both 10 and 5% respectively. And 30% of these members of the community are under the age of 18. And so what it does is this lets us know that there are robust family services and transportation that caters to school and work commutes is what we are looking at. In terms of economic diversity, there I think a lot other projects had talked about the household incomes, because it was 6 census tracts, and you'll see that in the next slide. But basically it varies. Can you go back a slide? I'm sorry. What I meant to say is that you'll see that there's 6 census tracts that we worked in, but the income was as low as 35,000, and then in some census tracts the poverty rates were up to 25%. And previous presentations had stated what those in comparison to the state are. So definitely median household income is across the board, and we definitely see a need, critical need in our communities for affordable transportation options to ensure that residents have access to critical opportunities such as employment, healthcare, and education that does not cause undue financial burden. Similarly, within the transportation network, 11% of the road network is robust in Modesto, but only 11% of the community uses public transit. Definitely need to look at ways to improve or to look at the usage of these mobility options, such as looking at more frequent bus routes and introduction of clean, efficient transportation options that are vital to the community's needs, and reducing reliance on personal vehicles. I won't go into it, but obviously there's definitely a need for electrical charging stations. Is definitely growing in the Central Valley. However, we are not seeing these infrastructure or the demand itself. The demand is there. We're just not seeing it in the communities, in our low-income communities, not just in Modesto or Stanislaus County, but really across the state of California. Next slide. So this was our outreach engagement tool in order to have the opportunity to be able to communicate with the community, to communicate rather with the community about this particular transportation needs assessment, or CTNA. And so what we decided to do was to actually have a map to ask the communities. As you can see, it's very broad range within the city of Modesto, has a lot of underserved neighborhoods. And so these areas were the project. And so being able to do this, we were doing this for 2 purposes, or for 2 key reasons: to encourage survey participation and to facilitate open conversations with community members apart from or aside from the CTNA survey, or Community Transportation Needs Assessment Survey. Next slide. Go ahead, Ali.
Yeah, and so the Yeah, and so the key here really was, again, to look at the attitudes and assumptions of existing residents with whom we knew also were in communities that had been either divested in or underinvested in. And so, again, leaning into the data collection resources at CMO, we were able to, paint a pretty darn good picture of sort of what is accessible in the community, what's not accessible in the community. The key with the engagements were really understanding where are folks in the community, and then really sort of scheduling opportunities to go out and have one-on-one conversations with folks or group settings with folks. And then, of course, when we were in those settings, we were really trying to understand through the sort of survey process or the focus process, how to also educate and inform about mobility solutions and or options. And next, please. Yeah, so when we talk about like enhanced community engagement, what we're really talking about is leveraging this study and all of the work related to the study to continue doing what VIP does really well in the community and across the region, which is capacity building and organizing in criminal justice space. And so, of course, we were able to do that in terms of analyzing sort of travel behavior. Again, really leaned into the data collection methods that CMO sort of provided guidance around. With regard to promoting clean mobility options, we had two situations where or two events where both electric vehicles and or micromobility equipment were on site for community members to experience and have sort of a hands-on touch and feel. Ultimately the objective here is at the end of the day is to compile all this data into the summary report and ultimately the final report that will be presented to community stakeholders, local leadership, and the project administration team. Next slide, please. In terms of the survey, we collected roughly 199 survey responses from community members. We held four focus groups, 4 focus group meetings across the varied neighborhoods. We did that in partnership with the school district because, again, I think the key here is to meet folks where they're at. And many of these families, of course, have young kids in the school system. And then in terms of stakeholder participation, VIP assembled a robust stakeholder group, which comprised, of course, of the VIP leadership, other community-based organizations, and both local and county government officials who represented those jurisdictions on the stakeholder group. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so just very briefly, this is just the engagement of the different opportunities that we had, whether it was a focus group or a mobility demonstration. And so this was just an opportunity just to engage with the broader community. And in all, we had about 225 people participate, both with the focus group and surveys. Next slide. Ollie.
Yep. Yeah, and so in talking in both focus groups and in the surveys, what we found was that 80% of respondents are seeking some sort of improvement in public transportation. So rather that improvement is increased frequency of routes and or better infrastructure related to bus stops themselves and or safety related to just travel on the transit system. There, in terms of vehicle dependency, there was very high number, nearly 78% of individuals that we talked to used a vehicle daily in some way, rather it was their car or they drove with someone else. We flagged, nearly 60 or 65% of respondents shared with us that they were concerned about active transportation safety and the lack of improvements in a number of these neighborhoods related to sidewalk and capital improvements and that sort of infrastructure, and that needed to be addressed. That would include, 70% of those respondents believe that that was a priority. In terms of the electric vehicle and or charging infrastructure, it's interesting. A lot of the population that we came in contact with were absolutely aware of electric vehicles, and a number of them had ridden in electric vehicles. When you begin to have conversations about what are your primary concerns related to electric vehicle and these types of clean mobility options, two issues rise to primacy. The first issue is cost associated with the hardware itself, the vehicle, and then the lack of existing charging infrastructure, particularly in the communities where we need it the most. Next slide, please.
These are just some of the lessons learned. I won't take because I know we're at time, but we had went from a long survey to a short survey. So we're looking at trends and what the participation looked like. We went to a variety of different outreach opportunities outreach and engagement opportunities that included community meetings, follow-up phone calls, text messages, door-to-door campaign, and we faced some challenges along the way. And so those were improved, or looking at those opportunities over time and what we may be able to do in the future, collectively, working together with community members, community-based organizations, and stakeholders. Last slide.
Yeah, so really the next step for Valley Improvement Projects in this particular initiative is to continue to engage the stakeholder group that we've brought together, have more conversations with community members to learn what are the sort of best tailored solutions for their needs, and also lean into the County of Stanislaus and their 2022 zero emission vehicle and charging infrastructure study, which takes sort of a deeper dive into where investments need to be made along the way. But look forward to continuing to organize with community members and bring solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Edgar. Next, if you have any questions, I saw a question asked in the chat and has been answered already. Please continue to ask questions in the chat. We have Gold Coast Transit District next, presented by Martin. Martin, whenever you're ready.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Martin Rodriguez. Can you guys hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
All right, great, thanks. So I am presenting on behalf of Gold Coast Transit District and Nyland Promise for the Nyland Acres Transportation Needs Assessment. I am a transit planner with Gold Coast, so primarily focusing on fixed route bus service. Gold Coast is a special district that provides transit services to Western Ventura County. Can we go to the next slide, actually? Yeah, so the image you see on the screen is of the community of Nyland Acres. This was our project area. Historically, this community has been very difficult, at least from our perspective at Gold Coast, to provide transit service to, primarily because of how isolated it is from major centers in the city and our own service network, right? So as you can see, it's surrounded by fields at all sides, and on the south side of the community, it's separated by the 101. So we partnered with a community-based organization, a nonprofit called Nyland Promise. Nyland Promise has been around for, I think, close to a decade now. It's been very well known in our community, in our county, for their creative and sometimes unconventional outreach strategies, right? They have a really strong tie to the community, and they provide a myriad of resources and were very pivotal for this project to be successful. Next slide, please. So our goals were really to understand what barriers and what mobility challenges residents in the community were facing when it comes to transportation, right? And what interest there was to adopt new or different modes of transportation that the community would actually use. One of the things that we learned is that there really is a strong, sentiment from the community residents that this community, that Nyland Acres, is forgotten, right, when it comes to transportation and generally just the planning process. So we also really wanted to conduct the project with the goal of emphasizing participation from the community as part of this whole process. Next slide, please. For methodology, we directly modeled the components of CMO, of the CTNA. There was extensive data analysis ranging from transit usage, traffic patterns, bike and pedestrian safety, that really all kind of aim to touch on the key themes of affordability, accessibility, and reliability. We also had a community survey to get more data on things that were a little bit more difficult to capture in the data analysis. So, such as kind of transportation challenges, knowledge of different residents' knowledge and experience, or exposure, I should say, to different transportation modes of transportation, and then also, of course, just challenges that they face just getting around the community, but of course, getting out of the community. From there, we conducted 2 different phases of community outreach, kind of culminating into 2 different community fairs. In the second phase, we also conducted a mobility preference survey. So kind of the first phase, we used the findings and the results of the data analysis and the findings from the community survey to basically come back to the community, share what we learned, and then ask them, right, based off of what we are presenting to you, here are mobility options that came up as that emerged as top priority, right, or top interest within the community. Which would you like to see implemented? Next slide. Here are some key findings from the survey and demographic data. We learned that nearly 25% of the population lives below the poverty level, and that almost half of the population has limited English speaking proficiency. In general, about a third of our survey respondents indicated that they have difficulty getting to where they need to get to, with their biggest transportation setback being the inability to drive, right? Either not knowing how to drive or not having a license. This is really important when we talk about transportation, specifically in this community where most homes are made up of multifamilies and there's about 3 cars per house, right? I mean, the mode of transportation for the majority of the residents, over 90%, is through a vehicle, right? Through a personal vehicle. And so we also looked at travel behavior and found that trips beyond work commutes are typically pretty short, 2 to 6 miles, and that work trips decrease by only about 60% on the weekends. So that's something that we found particularly interesting, especially, and I think something that also needs to be considered in the planning, right? So certain transportation systems, I know ours does, at Gold Coast, services typically are reduced, right, over the weekend. So, for example, the transit service we provide is much less on Saturday and Sunday than it is during the week, right? Monday through Friday. So something we kind of explored with that is, how does that affect those kind of limited transportation options on the weekend? How does that affect people who don't really see a difference, right, in terms of their commute patterns from the weekday to the weekend? Next slide, please. So some lessons we learned, you know, it's been mentioned a couple times in this in these presentations, and I think I also stand by it, is that partnering with a nonprofit or, you know, a trusted community based organization, it's pretty pivotal, right? It's very vital to see meaningful participation from the community that you're working with. At the beginning, it was pretty challenging to get engagement from the community. We would go out, we meaning, you know, staff at Gold Coast would go out to try to speak to residents, but people were surprisingly not really familiar with Gold Coast, right? And the services that we were providing. It really wasn't until our project partner, Nyland Promise, started doing more of the on-the-ground work that we started to see kind of an uptick in engagement, whether it was just conversations that we would have with people at different community events, survey responses, right? That number increased, you know, once our community partner, our project partner started going out to the community, you know, and engaging with people a little bit more. I mentioned, you know, earlier that a lot of residents shared that sentiment that Nyland Acres was an abandoned community. And so, you know, it really runs parallel, right? When you're out there in the community, you can see it, right? There isn't a lot of pedestrian infrastructure. There really isn't a lot of bike infrastructure. The roads are not particularly safe or well maintained. And a lot of projects kind of coming out of the county typically, you know, we say it takes a one size fits all approach, without really considering what the individual residents in this community need. So, you know, when we talk about next steps, if we could go to the next slide. Something in, you know, in addition to pursuing a voucher for a mobility project, I think information sharing with other local agencies is going to be very resourceful. You know, the things that we learned, right? Things that kind of came out of it that, like I said, other transportation projects or other transportation plans only kind of grazed on. I think we really kind of went into more depth as to what needs the community actually wants to see within their community. You know, I think the needs assessment wasn't really limited to just addressing gaps that can be improved by transportation or mobility solutions, but also address like mobility barriers in a very general sense with the community, right? So kind of looking at improvements for streets and roads, bike and safety programs could also be considered moving forward. Yeah, that concludes the presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take any.
Thank you, Martin. We'll have a Q&A after this last presentation from Craig. And in the meantime, please feel free to put the questions in the chat. Craig, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. This presentation is about City of Escondido Community Transportation Needs Assessment. I'm Craig Williams. I work for the City of Escondido as an associate engineer, primarily traffic engineering, as well as transportation, multimodal transportation assessment issues. We were quite fortunate and very appreciative of CMO to be successful in this grant, and the timing for us worked out extremely well because we were just getting started, literally in consultant negotiations for doing a comprehensive active transportation strategy. So when we got approval of this grant, it allowed us, we worked with Katerina and her colleagues, and were able to modify the scope of work for our consultant for this active transportation strategy. And it allowed us to go much, much, much deeper into public outreach, public engagement. It really let us look a lot deeper into the transportation disadvantaged community within the city of Escondido, and it also allowed us to look toward some of the on-the-street needs that the folks that helped us with public input shared with us. So it was actually a really good news story and probably a unique opportunity for us. So if we can go to the next slide. City of Escondido is fair size, 37 square miles. We have about 150,000 residents. Demographics, you can see here, 40% non-Hispanic white, 49% Hispanic Latino. So the split is fairly even. Median age is about 32, although we have about 10% of our population is 65 and older. Median household income is about 42,000. We've got 13% below the poverty line and 9% of families. We have a reasonably good transportation options system. Although interestingly, not a lot of people know about it, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. We're the end of a line for a rapid transit line that goes out to the coast, out to Oceanside. We're about 30 miles inland from the coast. And we're about 25 or 30 miles north of downtown San Diego. So we're at the north end of a rapid bus that goes straight down to San Diego. Particularly that bus, which offers so many opportunities for transit trips to destinations, particularly for work destinations, either communities to the west on the rapid bus or I'm sorry, on the train, or communities to the south. It unfortunately seems to be a really well kept secret, and we have found that a lot of folks weren't very aware of it, and one of the things we want to handle moving forward. We have a fairly good intracity bus route, and as most cities have a pretty high single occupancy vehicle trip rate, although many of the residents that live in the community don't even have access to a car. So they were very much our target audience. Next slide. You can see, it's hard to see on this, but the light gray shades around the outside are also the boundaries within the city of Escondido. But you can see that the central part of it, and I would guess that that is 50% of the total area within the city, is considered to be a disadvantaged area. And that was our focus. Next slide. Our goals, as probably most everybody's goals were, we identified clean mobility options that help community members overcome transportation challenges while also providing environmental benefits. Our objectives were fairly well defined, I thought. Understanding how residents currently travel, identifying unmet community transportation needs, plus existing mobility barriers. Were split a little bit left of center by Interstate 15, I'm sorry. And then north and south were split by State Route 78, which is a freeway, at least on the western side. We wanted to determine what new or expanded mobility services would be preferred. We looked at improving access for economic opportunity, medical facilities, schools, parks, basically every destination that people would like to go to, but particularly those that don't have good transportation options. What issues do they have with getting to where they need to go, whether it's school, a park, a friend's house, or a work destination. It gave us an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, to engage this historically marginalized communities within the city, and it opened up a lot of eyes to what some of those issues were. And we hope that that study and that effort stays with us for a lot of years to come. And certainly, I don't know how many people have mentioned this, but as we look at different transportation options, any of those that are outside the single occupancy vehicle offers an opportunity to reduce VMT, vehicle miles traveled, and greenhouse gas. Next slide. So without going into a lot of details, because I'm the last person to speak, and everybody, it's really hard to be the last speaker. We collected data on transportation options, a lot of information from census and info, traffic collisions throughout the city, what kind of volumes we had, how walkable the city was, in what areas, what kinds of income the people had, and what kind of jobs they had, and then where the workers were. Community engagement, we'll get into a little bit more of that in a minute, but we did Survey Monkey type surveys. We did multiple in-person meetings. We had this interactive feedback map with about 200 or more responses. Gave us a great insight to where they thought their transportation barriers were, and perhaps where some of their opportunities were. We had about 300 responses for the surveys. Very good detail on the web map. We did find, and I'll talk about this in a minute, that the survey was a little bit long, trying to get everything covered that we wanted to get covered. Probably in some cases detracted for people taking the time to fill out the survey. Total number of events, we had about 300 people. It was a great, in regard to partnerships, it was really a great opportunity to bring some good folks together and expose some of the concerns to a wider variety of folks that might not have ever known. Certainly, the opportunity within the city leadership was huge, bringing together a number of different departments that weren't very familiar with transportation options, but they allowed us a window into a number of other organizations that they work with all the time. One in particular was the Senior Community Center. Senior Education Forum, Educational Compact. It was a great partnership. Next slide. Survey responses, there was a high desire for on-demand microtransit service. Opportunity to look at different better public transit options, on-demand service, light rail service, microtransit, shuttle service. Go ahead. Lessons learned. Some of the virtual outreach tools, while they gave us some great insight to what people wanted, we lost some people that weren't particularly as computer fluent as we would like them to be. We did find that some people really didn't understand the jargon, even though we did some visual glossary information. We tried really hard to make everything English and Spanish. I mentioned the survey. Perhaps we could have included some more fun activities. And we did think that some of the data was not quite granular enough that we got to make those decisions. I think last slide. We do hope sometime to apply for a mobility project voucher. we are working toward some opportunities for implementing service once we get that opportunity. Again, I said the survey, the study that we did provides a great insight to some of the transportation challenges for people in the city. And we have the opportunity to share that with people for years to come. And also part of that will be reducing some of those infrastructure challenges that we heard about and that we were aware of. You can't always just walk out of your house and walk to the nearest bus outside your door. You usually have to use either a bike or walking or some other means in order to get to that and to your ultimate destination. That's it.
Thank you, Craig. Does anyone have any questions for the last three presentations? To Edgar, Ali, Craig, and Martin. We have a question in the chat. What is the best combinations of surveys versus focus groups versus event-based surveys?
Can you restate that question?
What is the best combinations of surveys, focus groups, and event-based surveys?
Is that for any of the presenters?
Yes.
I can speak if it helps.
Yes, go ahead.
So Ali or anybody else. Most of you had different combinations of tools that you used, and it seems like Craig, our last speaker, said, it was maybe a little too limited in their approach, but is there a balance in terms of approaches to gather community information and represent them well? Sometimes it sounds like all of you tried to have background data and information about the community in general that you're trying to serve, but how do you get more information in their actual opinions? So you could do the surveys, which tend to have maybe more people who are more comfortable in an online environment. You can have focus groups, which are maybe people are more comfortable speaking to their ideas. And then some of you did even events, event type of scenarios where you actually went to different places to gather information. So what's the right balance, or how do you, or what do you feel you could have done differently to maybe get your desired result?
I think in both our experiences with VIP and the Urban League, I would say that it varied, and it really sort of depended on the groups and or individuals we spoke with, right? And what I would say is that certainly we felt like we received the most quality data from focus group situations and settings, right? Where it was more of a free-flowing conversation, right? We were in a space where folks were trusting enough to be very vulnerable and very honest about their current situation and or their perspective on community affairs. And I feel like of the hundreds of surveys of that were, sort of survey respondents that came in from both projects, that the most quality data was the data where we had small group conversations.
This is Georgina. I could add a little bit here too. Our annual transportation survey is normally open 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the number of responses. We thought we were going to do the same thing with this survey, and we kept it open for 6 weeks. We just weren't getting in touch with our communities the way we thought we would. So we left it open a lot longer. The focus groups, we added group options for after 5 p.m. and on weekend and off-site, and allowed people to sign up for whatever suited them. Nobody wanted those options. That was very interesting. And I don't know, I guess I don't know what you mean by event-based survey.
I can speak to events. I hosted about three to four events really, in the community. I went to community-based events as well, farmers markets. I was at coffee shops, and I really got a really good response. And to Ali's point was, I held focus groups right there at the coffee shop, and when people heard me speaking, they would really get engaged. And yeah, parks. I was at parks, bus stops. I had some good conversations at a couple bus stops, which was surprising. And I would encourage people to just um, go to your farmers market because they're there. The community's there. The school events, after school events, they're there. Church. I went to a church, a couple church events that were happening in the community was really, which was great. And meeting the community where they're at is a huge help. And people feel warm and um, less defensive when there's something going on as well, like some music events. I had a few music events that were really great too. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you all. We also have another question from Kelly. Kelly, do you want to read your question?
I'm glad to do that. And I want this to be received in the understanding that traditionally we don't reach out to this part of the community. But if any of you had experience in reaching the part of the community that is unhoused and what their transportation needs and concerns are, it'd be really helpful. And I'm kind of thinking that Jeff may have some insights into that, given the different places that he went.
Yeah, actually, I did reach out to a few homeless individuals in the community, and they were really the concern with them was being looked at as if they were being gonna do something to it, right? Because I'm walking the street and they don't want to be, they just some people are just kind of going through a transition, changing environments.
So how did you reach out to them? Just by the conversations you had on the street, or did you
yeah,
with service providers or events?
Yeah,
that
at the events, I would see people at 7-Eleven sometimes. Just
Yeah.
they would hear me talking to other people, and they would come up. And most of the times, I would just, they felt a little, people feel welcome when they come up to me and they hear me talking, and we just kind of get engaged. And I don't really, I can see some people, I know that they're homeless, but I don't really ask that question. I just ask them, what do you think about the programs in the community? And I go to the homeless shelters too. I've gone to those as well, talked to people there, so I encourage, reaching out. I would say I'm really on the ground floor in the community. And I've been here for, like I said, 20 years, and I've lived all through the Monterey County, and I love it, and I love the people. And I worked hand with District 4, Wendy Askew. She had her supervisor give me a lot of good assistance and to turn me on to organizations in the community. So I was very engaged with also the Monterey Air Resource Board. They're very open and I was well received there, and they helped me out as well tremendously in locations and stuff. And farm workers. I went to the farms, and that's where I'm not, my Spanish is not really good that well, but I do my best to say what I can and facilitate with community. So it's just really about being very vulnerable and just reaching out.
Right. Because no matter how long you keep a survey open, you're not going to get responses from that community.
You got to actually go to them.
Right.
Like really
But,
go. It's a challenge. Because I had a lot of door slams before all this information that I'm saying was on the backs of like a lot of frustration, and I'm human just like everyone else, and I don't like a door being slammed in my face like anyone else.
Oh
And
man, I hear you.
not like coming to the door, like they got those cameras now, like the ring thing. Who are you? What are you doing here? And I'm surprised people are really like concerned with the health as well, because we're still a lot of COVID situations, and just illness in general is out. People getting sick out there, so it's a lot of being very cautious and washing your hands and having sanitizer around is critical. But I'm really into the community, so it pretty comes natural to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff and Kelly, for that question. If you have any other questions, please write them in the chat. We are way over time, but we still have one last component to share on program lessons learned, and we'll give it back to Joey.
Thank you so much. Such great presentations, really awesome. I will try to move quickly through the next few slides without talking too fast. So I wanted to share some of the things that the program administration team, which is again CalSTART, the Shared Use Mobility Center, and then of course with support and funding from the California Air Resources Board, the three of us came together to make some changes and agree on some changes for the second window of these projects. CMO aims to be a dynamic pilot program that can make adjustments to best meet the needs of awarded communities. And so shout out to CARB and CalSTART for participating in that as well. Some crucial changes were, we had a lot of extensions in the first window, or awardees asking for an extension. So we just said 12 months is the new timeline for window 2. So we added some more time. Another thing we added, more importantly, I think, was we doubled the funding amount from $50,000 to $100,000. We recognized increased costs over the last few years. Also the high burden of some of the insurance costs, and also just kind of coupling that with the extended timeline. We wanted to make sure awardees had the resources they needed. And one thing we also introduced to make sure awardees could be paid quickly was a milestone-based payment option, where when awardees completed a certain objective, they could show that and they would be reimbursed quickly. We kept the payment-based as well, but we added this option, which several window 2 awardees did take advantage of. Next slide. You've heard it from awardees, but I do want to just remind everyone that awardees, part of this CM Clean Mobility Options program and all of the CARB mobility equity programs, is that they have access to technical assistance from our program administrative team. So I want to highlight that each awardee was assigned a main point of contact on the program administration team to provide one-on-one technical assistance. They were also assigned a voucher lead from CalSTART to support voucher reimbursement and payment. Additionally, trainings were provided through what's called the Clean Mobility Equity Alliance. And that is a peer learning network for CARB's, the California Air Resources Board's sustainable community-based transportation projects. So the Clean Mobility Equity Alliance includes all CMO awardees, Sustainable Transportation Equity Project awardees, also known as STEP, STEP, Clean Mobility in Schools, and Planning and Capacity Building, and also regional awardees. The Clean Mobility Equity Alliance aims to advance along with educating and supporting awardees. It aims to advance mobility justice policy solutions to meet the state's climate, air quality, and equity goals. So there were some trainings we put together, specific CMEA trainings, specific for each component of the CTNA process. For the needs assessment process, we had a training about data collection. We had a training about community engagement, and we had a training about the summary report. But this round of awardees could also attend any other Clean Mobility Equity Alliance meeting. So they could network and learn from awardees in all these other programs as well, which is a great thing. Next slide, please. Okay, really quickly, this is a list of all the individual topics that awardees asked about through one-on-one technical assistance. And I just want to highlight a couple things. As you can see, there's a broad range of topics. The highest one was the program requirements. And that I just want to call out as CMO is still a very complex program with a dense implementation manual, but that's just necessary. But we're there to sort of provide that guidance and help awardees work through that and make sure that they're doing things correctly, right? And not sort of moving outside those boundaries. I also want to note that high on this high count is the resident survey and Alchemer. I just want to call out that Alchemer is a survey tool that all CMO awardees have access to utilize. It's a really powerful tool, but there is a bit of a learning curve, understandably. So we provide a lot of technical assistance on how to get the most out of that really powerful tool. And yeah, moving on to the next slide. So just a few lessons learned by the PA team working with this next round of awardees. One thing we offered was office hours, where we had every 2 weeks, someone from CalSTART and someone from SumC would open a Zoom room for an hour, and any awardee could pop in to ask questions or maybe hear from another awardee. I will say it was not utilized as much as we thought it would. We really saw more of the one-on-one check-ins being used. But when awardees did take advantage of this, we did have lively discussions, and there were a couple times it was great to see awardees connect with each other in that space as well. A majority of the technical assistance was provided through emails and online meetings. So just to call that out, we did spend some time on the phone as well, Jeff. And I do also want to add that we did get a chance to make some site visits to connect with awardees in there as they did community engagement events. We strive to balance being supportive in our site visits while also not adding another thing to awardees' plates as well. We know a site visit can also be potentially a burden. I will also add that we were able to connect with awardees in person as well at the Clean Mobility Forum, which is sort of the Clean Mobility Equity Alliance big event in 2023 and 2024. These awardees were able to use funding from their voucher to attend both of those events, which is fantastic. So that wraps everything up. I just want to give a special thank you again to all of our awardees for their hard work and joining us today to share about their projects. I'd also sincerely like to thank CalSTART, our partner on the program administration team. Nora, Katie, and Solomon all worked a lot on maybe the less glamorous but very important part of this program, which is making sure awardees get paid and so much more. And I also want to give a special shout out and thank you to our interpreters at Rooted Language Justice. Thank you so much. And to all of you for staying with us for an extra 23 minutes. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. This recording will be uploaded on YouTube at a later time, as well as the presentations will be shared through the CMEA resources. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye now.